Randy Burden, I would invite you
Have someone stand up.
to come forward.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And I want to thank everybody for squeezing me in. Brandon and Virginia, thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for your dedication and hard work in the effort to restore our beloved lagoon. So my name is Randy Burden. Do you want to do an intro? No. Okay, my name is Randy Burden. I'm the Director of Engineering of EcoSense International. And we've been in existence since about 2000, and we're dedicated to providing cost-effective, simple solutions for storm and surface water issues, quality issues. So, most of you may be aware that we've been formulating filters and filter media for a number of years successfully, and we've been manufacturing baffle boxes and other structure-type treatment systems since 2008 as well. Now, this is a completely different concept than what we've been talking about, so set that aside for a moment and think a little bit differently here. So with we're going to talk about nutrient load reduction 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and this would be a solar filtration system, okay? So just to give a little description, we have created a filter, and we did this last year, and it was actually originally designed for pond applications. It's a relatively inexpensive system. Of course, it's relatively small as well, but all the design components are scalable. So we can change things very easily to make them larger or smaller depending on what is needed. Let me go back a second here. I want to talk a little bit here. Okay, so we have it's about a 100-gallon filter, and it will utilize also a BAM media, a bioactive media that we manufacture called Nutrigon. Now, about 3 or 4 years ago, we started developing the media because at that time we actually tried to, because the Bolden Gold was actually becoming well known and popular at that time, and just in competition with other companies that do baffle boxes and things, we were interested in purchasing that media for our baffle boxes, but we were disallowed. We were not allowed to buy it because of some business contracts and so forth that the suppliers have. So we were unable to get a hold of that. So, we couldn't compete in certain arenas because of that. So we decided to come up with our own. So we went to work, and it's been kind of a process, for over the last few years in developing this media. So the filter that we've designed is in an upflow configuration. We find that is the best type of flow pattern for these filters because it gives you a more even, steady head pressure that pushes the water through the media and distributes it evenly throughout the media. So that's usually the better situation. We're also going to use a 100-watt solar panel for a pump with a deep cycle battery and a control module, and I see some of my words have gotten jumbled up. Jeff and I were just talking about that. Sometimes when you go from application to application, you kind of jumbles things up. So we're going to use a 100-gallon per hour pump. Now, this is a small little filter. So 100 gallons per hour, if you run it all 24 hours a day, it's 2,400 gallons. So now it kind of jumps up a little bit in its volume. Can we apply this from an idea about ponds or smaller bodies of water to a large body like the Indian River? Can we implement it? Would it be cost effective? So I was meeting with some of Virginia's staff a couple of weeks ago, and we were on another project. We were looking for solutions for actually phosphorus removal for certain areas, and we were struggling trying to come up with some ideas, and finished the meeting, came up with some ideas, and it turned out that they were going to be what we were talking about was going to have to be permitted, which the evil permit, right? Where in this case we were going to have hydrologic studies and stuff. So now you got a permit, right? It's a huge permit. So went back to my office and did some work, research, looked around, trying to think of what we might be able to do. Went back, had another meeting with the staff, and it occurred to me at that time that this filter that we kind of invented last year might actually have an application there. So, and then I got thinking about it. Would it possibly be a benefit to the actual lagoon body itself? So I decided to look at some numbers. Now is there any bean counters in the room? No, that's surprising. But we do need those guys and gals, though, that's for sure. So according to Tetra Tech, as you see there, in their updated version of the Save Our Lagoon plan, the cost for dredging, and this is just kind of an example, $462, and John, I know you were, you look at these numbers and you think, my goodness, and we're looking a little bucket of stuff, right? So $462.50 per pound for total nitrogen, and $3,000, over $3,000 for phosphorus. So, and these were the most cost-effective dredging projects, and that's averaged from a number of projects that they were looking at. So keep that in mind. So this 24/7 filter by the numbers now. So we filter 378 liters per hour, and with a media bed like this, we're going to be roughly about an hour bed contact time. We should probably realize about a 60% reduction in total nitrogen and somewhere around 50% total reduction in total phosphorus. So the Indian River, based again on those studies, and I pulled a lot of different sampling points to get an average or median for nitrogen at 1.4 milligrams per liter for the lagoon as a whole, and 0.05 milligrams for the lagoon for total phosphorus. So just run real simple math here, 9,000 or so liters per day, and we multiply that by the concentration. In that case, I put it in grams, and then again times 60%, which would be the reduction, and we see for nitrogen 7.62 grams total nitrogen per day, and 2.27 total grams total phosphorus per day. So we estimate the life of that filter bed based on loading and studies and so forth at about 2.5 years. And by the way, we talk about media, BAM, and things lasting forever. That's a little bit of a misnomer, because these filters, are constantly loaded with particulates. And the particulates gradually reduce the hydraulic capacity of these filters, whether the mineral components in the filters still may be active, but we can't get water through them anymore because they're just packed up. So the flow rates drop dramatically. So they can't last 20 years. They, unless they're getting really clean water, which typically we're not seeing that. That's why we're trying to clean it up. So they usually have to be serviced in some way or another, whether it's replacement or whether they have to be backwashed or some other way of restoring the hydraulic capacity. More for numbers. So if we installed one unit, and we would say approximate cost for a single unit, if somebody that lived down on the lagoon somewhere, like my partner George, said, I want to have that filter to help the lagoon, he'd say, I want to order one, and we'd build one of them. It cost about $2,000. We could sell it to him for about $2,000. So doing the numbers, the cost for that would be $130.55 over that 2.5-year period for total nitrogen removal. And for total phosphorus, it'd be about $438 for each pound removed of total phosphorus. So that's much better. That's a lot better than the typical projects that we're seeing. The cost is coming down. And it's a lot less than what we are paying for the dredging removal. Now, if we were able to make a lot of these filters, we'll just say 1,000 units, we could certainly reduce the cost dramatically because, production and production numbers is king. So when you can produce a lot of things, you have the ability to purchase your components at a lower price, and you can, make your assembly and so forth a lot more efficient. So the cost can come down dramatically. So you see now that the cost per pound removed comes down, again, split in half because we've cut the cost in half. So we're down with the nitrogen at $65.25 or 27 cents per pound removed over that period. Now, if we go to this thing will last quite a while. Now, after 2.5 years, I'm going to say that it's going to need maybe a new pump, and it certainly is going to need another bed of media to be replaced in there because that's going to get clogged up over time. So now that second 2.5-year period of operation, the costs $335 or so to restore the capacity and get everything in operation again for that system. And now your cost for nitrogen remover is down to something that makes some kind of sense to humanity and people that get a paycheck every couple of weeks. So if you look at a 5-year use for a unit when you're using 1,000 units, it averages out for the cost per pound $43 or so for nitrogen and $146 for total phosphorus removal. Now, before I go on, is there any questions at this point?
I have a question. So after the second 2.5 years, is the media still, could you use it for another 2.5 years at that same cost factor, or would you?
No, I'm saying that the media likely would need replacement, and I would say that the pump may need to be replaced.
So every 2.5 years, but the system itself.
Oh, the rest of the system, yeah, it's totally just.
What would be the life expectancy of the rest of the system where you could keep putting in the $335 every 2.5 years?
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying? I
do. The other components, well, we're going to have a controller, which, that costs $14. So if it goes, $14. A battery probably have to be replaced. That would all be included in that cost that I'm figuring there. But the system, the tubing, the piping, the vessel, the filter vessel itself, that would be there. I'm sure I'll be in the ground before that vessel goes away. What we initially designed it with is a cattle feeding tub, basically. So they put these things out in the pastures for years, and they automatically filter them with well water, with these solar type pumps. and so that the cattle can go get a drink, and they last forever. In fact, my operations manager, Aga, she used to, she's an aquatic biologist, and she used to take care of ponds, and she also worked in the nursery at the Ace Hardware in Merritt Island. They sold those tubs there, and she was telling me they never got one back, never ever had heard of one failing in all the years that she was there. So,
And so,
go ahead.
I was
Lauren,
going to
go
ask, so your figures are based on the solar daylight hours, ability to run it?
Well, this assumes 24 hours, so with a proper battery, if you use probably with 2 deep cycle batteries, you could probably easily run it nearly 24/7. Obviously with weather conditions, and you lose some charging capacity from your solar panel from time to time. That hasn't been analyzed directly, but we're certainly going to.
And the solar panel has about a 25-year life?
Yeah, they typically, I
Yeah.
think that's what they are. Of course, around here with the windstorms we get, that might be
Right.
an issue, but
Maintenance costs include labor.
yes.
I'm trying to figure out the application. I mean, we're going to have.
Right.
Where are you going to put something that filters 100 gallons or even 2,000 gallons a day? I mean, that's insignificant that's not even my canal. And we're only talking about nitrogen, so to compare that to muck is completely irrelevant in my view. Yes, we do dollars on nitrogen, but muck has many more implications than just nitrogen. So where would you use this? I mean, that's what I'm trying, where would you use this?
Yeah, and keep in mind that, in science like calculus, when we have a complex problem, we have to break things up into segments and study those segments. And of course, we don't want to get so close to the trees that we don't see the big picture. We've got to take a look at the big picture first. But each small system like this, easily installed, easily moved from place to place. So we talk about how do we implement this, right? How can we make this something that would be effective? Because we're looking at
Are we trying to clean the nitrogen out of the river with this?
yeah, the water column of the river. So
Okay.
so what we did was we said, well, how are we going to implement this? This is for a little pond that would be of benefit to a stormwater pond, say. We see, a market for that. But how would we help the lagoon? Well, we figured we need a lot of these things to help the lagoon. So we looked at, you look at the pounds removed over a period of time. If you use many units, it's a very significant amount compared to, oyster restoration or all these other kind of projects that are going on.
So how many gallons on a daily basis in your wide scale could you treat?
Yeah, 2,400 per unit.
And
Times 1,000,
so,
240,000.
yeah, so the amount of water that just comes in through the Sebastian Inlet twice a day is what, like 8 billion gallons? So is it 8 billion? I mean, we're not talking
But
about...
we're talking about removing a quantifiable, easily quantifiable load from the lagoon. So if it's, 15,000 pounds over a year, how does that compare to what we're doing on other things? It's a very significant number. Now, I'm not prepared to speak to exactly because I don't have them off the top of my head, but I think if you, I thought I had some total weights in here somewhere. I probably didn't put them in here. This thing was kind of hastily, because this is all pretty new concept here, so it's a little bit early to discuss that. But I think I recall seeing in terms of like 15,000 pounds could be removed from the lagoon.
Of nitrogen.
Of nitrogen.
Okay.
Randy, did you have any more slides?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Got one. So here's a little photograph. We took the opportunity to install the prototype version at my partner George Dusich's house, who who lives on Sykes Creek, and we're poised to put it in operation. And of course, I want to address permitting. I spoke with St. John's. I spoke to Cammie Dewey, and she said that she believed that, yes, we have to have a permit for this because it is in, the intake for this unit would have to be obviously in the lagoon. So, but she said a general permit would be very easy to come by with this, that would be on a big scale. And then I spoke to Lisa Soto, you all know Lisa, about possible concepts because one of the staff members, one of Virginia's staff members brought this up, and we're talking around the possibility of engaging the community to possibly utilize personal property for installation of these types of units. And I spoke to Lisa about that. I showed her the numbers, and Lisa, you want to?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa Soto, the Executive Director of Marine Resources Council. Randy came to me a couple weeks ago with this idea, and we talked about, the possibility of using volunteers and what, he wanted to know what I thought, if this is something that volunteers could feasibly undertake. He described the maintenance to me a little bit, and I thought, oh, absolutely. And, we have tremendous support. And you guys, you've heard it from our community. Everybody's willing to do just about anything to save this lagoon right now. So there's no doubt. I feel completely confident that we can engage some of our existing volunteers, recruit more. Other organizations have volunteers that they can use also. But we've got about, I want to say 50 or 60 volunteers in Brevard right now that are doing weekly monitoring of water quality. So it'd be kind of neat to have, our water quality monitors also have this device so we can almost monitor it, its function and if it's working, where the device is located. That's all. I think that's what I'm here for. Thanks for considering innovative technologies. I think it's super important. We can't keep doing the same old thing we've always been doing and expect a different result. So innovation is definitely going to be key. Thank you.
Sideline, this, the media, the Nutrigon media will also remove, if we do, we don't have too many blue-green problems around here, but it does remove the cyanotoxin by filtration. So I like to just touch, it looks like this thing has really gotten disturbed here. Let's see.
The image quality.
So I just want to go over the media just briefly if I have a little bit of time. Do I have some time?
They must have fixed it.
Sure.
So it's, you can see here, unique and very efficient multi-process media. It's also a biologically active media, as is one Marty was talking about. Contains inorganic and organic carbon sources. We find that although the organic carbon sources are used up over time, they are simply metabolized as food. But one of the limiting factors for denitrification, for the denitrification process, is the carbon source. And there's a lot of studies that look at that throughout academia, and I found that you need to provide an alternate form of carbon for the process, in addition to the nitrate needed as well, and the low oxygen content. Little high, temperatures in the 80, 90, 100 degree Fahrenheit would be good too. That keeps those organisms cooking right along. But that is necessary to have a little bit of an organic content. Now we do for this media, for the 24/7 filter, we're looking at reducing the organic content component of the media to a low level, because especially with the lagoon as it is now, we have a tremendous organic load with the brown algae blooms, as you can see it in the water, and that will provide an organic content. So the composition of the media is 1/4 to 3/4 nuggets, and we will vary the composition of the media depending on the application. And what we would like to do with this, if we can get a pilot project going with this and get a number, say 20, 30 units out in use, we could actually constantly monitor these, and it's very easy to remove the media and alter it so we can make adjustments to see what we're getting. Are we getting what we want in nitrogen removal? Are we getting what we want in phosphorus removal? If not, we can alter the media slightly to focus on that end of it more closely. So again, we talked about hydraulic performance. So its impedance in this media is very low, although it does remain wet too. So if this media absorbs a lot of water, so when it is used in an application underground and so forth, it stays wet even through dry periods, which is important to maintain the culture, the denitrification culture. Optimal bed contact time is very short. I recently had, I have a baffle box in Edgewater that we ran some samples on a couple of months ago. We had very low amount of, and typically the higher the amount of nitrate you have in the water, the larger mass of microbes you have, because there's more food for them. And in this case, we had an input of about 0.5 milligrams per liter of nitrate passing through the filter, and we were removing 80% with 1 hour contact time. Now that can't be explained entirely by adsorption, although our media does absorb nitrate as well as the basis media for a colonization of the organisms. This material contains absolutely no materials that are toxic in any way. In fact, each one of the ingredients that we use is actually used as feed supplements and feed fillers for cattle. It's very safe, all very safe materials. I might point out that maybe rubber crumb in very low concentrations may be non-toxic in a sense, but we know that it is a plastic, and therefore it is a microplastic being put into the environment for environmental purposes, but it's being put into the environment nevertheless. And the ecosystems tend to concentrate those things. So, you know, they tend to move them around and concentrate them in living organisms, and that's when they do become toxic. The media acts in a lot of different ways. One of the methods is with phosphorus removal, for example, would be precipitation. We blend the minerals so that they complement each other. For example, there's an activated carbon form in the media, and we add minerals that contain magnesium, and magnesium activates the carbon even further and allows it to hold more phosphorus and more nitrogen compounds for longer. Now these components actually store nitrate and ammonia and other things that are actually made available to the organisms as they need them. So if there's very low amounts of nitrogen going through the system will inherently work less efficiently. But because our media holds these kind of compounds in store, like it's in your pantry, they actually can access them and maintain a higher level of denitrification. So carbon sources for both heterotrophic and chemotrophic denitrifiers as well. The organic carbon source that we use is shown to produce a 6.5-time increase in denitrification rate over wood chips. This is well documented. The inorganic carbon source, as I mentioned, concentrates available nitrate for microbial colonies, and it facilitates electron transfer for denitrification and anammox as well, which we're not to forget, because that's discovered back in the 90s. It turns out that the nitrogen cycle was incomplete, and the anammox process could be as much as half of the nitrogen cycle globally. That's going on in our lagoon right now as well. Lab studies, the media removal rates for 1 hour bed contact time, this is not including any kind of microbial activity. This is a lab-produced cocktail of product that's put in and held in the media for 1 hour, and these are the types of results we get. It's also good for emerging contaminants, things like, pharmaceuticals and other things that are coming out to be problems now. This media also will absorb those types of things. Lots of different applications, similar applications to what Dr. Wanielista was talking about. We build different structures and put that, this is our vaultdn, which is a structure that we feel has a really nice balance of nitrification and denitrification going on, and can handle much higher flows than your typical upflow filter. This is that DN system offline with a baffle box, with a standard baffle box, where it can be set offline and filter the low flows. This is what we call our denitrovault, which is a hybrid baffle box and an upflow filter in the end stage that you would use the BAM media in there. This is another large bed, so we can propose large bed filters where we can use passive means, hydraulic head with the berms and so forth to create head to push water up through the media. This one here you're looking at here was about a 1/4 acre and designed to filter approximately 6,000 gallons per minute. So there you have where the scaling goes on, and we can do things like this to improve the number of gallons we're going to actually treat. And that's it.
I had a comment, Randy. First off, I'd like to echo Lisa's comment. Thank you for the bringing a new idea, new concepts. I think that's really cool. I think it's really important. Not only cool, but I think it's valuable and important that we have people bringing new ideas to us. And I think this idea is one of those perfect ideas that, and I don't want to steal Keith Winston's words, but he was talking about market forces. And I think if this is something, I know a lot of homeowners along the lagoon are saying, what can I do? Yes. And if people are talking about, well, what if I put some sort of air, if I put an air pump in my canal and I start making bubbles, but as Dr. Wanielista said, if you have aeration, there needs to be the nitrogen needs to be in the right state. If I'm saying that correctly, I'm not a scientist, I'm just pretending to be one on TV. But I think something like this would be perfect, or would be a great offering for somebody who lived on a canal who said, what can I do? First off, it's solar, it's not going to cost them anything. They can come in, they can put it in, and it can work. So I think this is a great idea that if it was marketed that way, might do very well on that. I do think comparing the numbers for dredging just might be a little bit off, and the only reason is because the dredge material fluxes, so it's constantly releasing that into the water. And I just want to make sure people that are watching this understand that the money that we're paying for dredging is because that material is continuously releasing that into the water. But I do think that this is one of those ingenuity ideas where a homeowner could put this outside their house and do their part to help the lagoon. So thank you for bringing this.
Thank you for your comment, Vinny. And I would like to say, though, that, and I was never trying to say that this would be a substitute for dredging. I've been here since '76, and I've spent a lot of time in the lagoon fishing. As a senior at FIT, I was in my project. I was spearing stingrays and excising stomachs, and doing all kinds of analysis. And I remember what the lagoon was, and if I wanted to have a clam bake, in 2 hours I came home with 100 clams. So I remember what it's like, and I know that the muck has to be removed. I know that, yeah.
My concern, and I know you do, my concern would be other people, they see that big number and they go, well, why are they spending all that money on muck? So that's just my part of being the education, but But, and I'm with you, my grandmother was spearing those stingrays, so she was quite a lady.
You
but-
really had to be careful back in
Yeah,
those days,
but
you know,
thank
where
you.
you walked
Thank
out
you.
there. All right.
Thank you so much.
John,
Just to pick up on Jenny's point,
you gotta go
we're not going to be
spear
in the
lines
business of packaging solutions for individual homeowners. But I think the Brevard Indian River Lagoon Coalition could pick that up and offer packages as part of their expression to the community. Just a comment.
Yep. I totally agree. I think the community is really engaged, and as does Lisa, and
Could I just say a couple of seconds? I know I'm not in on the schedule, but could I just say a couple of words? I'm the CEO of the company. Our structures have been used.
You have to come to Mike.
Our structures have been used now for many, many years, and not only here in Florida, but other places of the United States and also Canada. We do a lot of work in Scandinavia, terrific amount of work in Scandinavia. We're putting in systems in Oslo, Holland, Italy. We do work in many parts of the world. So we are tested every which way you can imagine on our structures capabilities, which are very, very high, among the best, okay? When we realized the possibility of what was going on here with the media, as far as the Golden Bowl, the first thing we did is, okay, if Golden Bowl is fine, we know our structures are good, we'll go ahead and buy Golden Bowl. We were directly told we could not buy it. It turns out it's a monopoly, the way it's set up right now. We can't break into a monopoly. So we are being flushed out of business because of the fact that that is a monopoly. So when that answer was said that, yes, you can buy it and anybody can buy it, that's not a true statement with us anyway. Do I have your promise right here in front of everyone else that we can buy Golden Bowl from you?
I think that there's
That's-
probably appropriate things and non-appropriate things. And
Maybe
that
it
may be
isn't
an
appropriate. I
argument for a
said
later
maybe I'm
day.
going to say something, but
Okay.
I'd rather bring that up right now because they're destroying our business just because of the monopoly that's going on.
That's something you probably need to just discuss with them. Okay.
Sorry, I can't defend anybody, but that's something
You're
that's dear to heart for us because we put a lot of design work in what we're doing.
thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, you took a marginally acceptable.
Madam Chair, the next speaker is Jeff Rapolte. Come on up, Jeff. I've asked him to he's with our stormwater program. He can come back next month. I know we're way over on time, so I've asked him to just explain the significance of what he was going to talk about today so that you keep that in your head and store it for next month.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for being flexible with us.
Yeah, no problem. I'm here to say hello then. Now, so to follow up on a lot of the research in the lab that folks like Marty and Randy and the case studies that they've talked about and the work that they've done over the years, over the past couple of years, Brevard County's Stormwater Utility Program has been working on trying to get similar results and bringing that research home so we can produce projects that are relatively significant nutrient reduction, that also balance cost effectiveness with other socioeconomic factors. I'm going to be doing a presentation that provides the design concepts of 2 full-scale projects, nutrient reduction projects, that are being implemented with these various filtration and BAM techniques so that we can optimize our future BMP projects, whether they're county stormwater utility fee funded, SORL funded, TMDL grant funded, whatnot. Just using local science-based data. And 2 of those projects, one of them is a comparison of the county's recycled mulch program, free mulch, with 2 readily available commercial medias, very similar to what you heard today. Side-by-side comparison on how they work along a pond. And another is a variable flow solar-powered pump chamber side-by-side system in which we are running the wood chips from the county's recycled mulch program in the chambers with an iron-enhanced sand filter above the water table, and we're varying the flow to determine optimal contact time. So I'll be bringing some information about those next time and walking you through those.
Thank you so much. All right, Dr. De Freese.
Okay, where's the big screen?
we're just moving down there because our screens don't work very well, so I just wanted the public to know that.
Good morning. Duane De Freese, Executive Director of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. I am here actually representing not just myself, but an undergraduate student who's been working with me, who actually had a class today, and he was really excited that I was going to tell him, don't go to class, come with me and let you give this presentation, read coffee. I'll talk to his data in a minute, and I'm going to blow through these slides fairly quickly. They are self-explanatory, but what I wanted to do today was to kind of connect some dots. And these are dots that started with me, gosh, almost 20 years ago when I was still with Hub's SeaWorld Research Institute, and a guy named Larry Harvey, an ex-naval aviator who was working with me, and we began to envision what Florida might look like if we had the same idea about water that we had about aviation and aerospace. You know, that we'd be a global economic leader in technology and innovation. And that thought process has stuck with me throughout the numerous jobs I had. So I want to give you a high view of the discussions that we just had and heard. I want to say that I was super excited to see Dr. Wanielista here. I mean, if you want a high bar or a high standard for where academia stretch out of those ivory towers over into solution sets with long data, peer-reviewed data that ultimately winds up in a commercial product that's useful to us who manage and do infrastructure, there's an example. And so if you took that example and expanded it in the building of an industry cluster, that's kind of where I want to go with this discussion today, and I will be relatively quick. I've also had the opportunity to work with Dick Nunes, former chairman of the board at Disney, and this is his vision that he and I talked about, continue to talk about a lot. Imagine if the state of Florida actually was a global leader in water technology, and imagine if we were applying those innovations and technologies right here in our backyard, right here on the Indian River Lagoon, and every one of our impaired waters were removed from that list, and we were the first state in the nation to make the claim of first clean water state in the nation. I mean, yeah, that's a real high bar, what Dick calls a blue sky dream. But when you talk to a gentleman who was standing in a cow pasture a number of decades ago with Walt Disney, and you see where we are today, I would argue that when we talk about the projects that you all are doing, when we think of this next 10 years of the Save Our Indian River Lagoon program, these projects, when you assemble them, and when you look, and we all look back 10 years at the innovation, the industry, the partners we have, that there's something more here than just projects that save the lagoon. We are really starting to build a base of industry to lead us to clean water. So this perspective, I want to just plant the seed. And planting the seeds is something I like to do. Hopefully I'll be around to see this tree fully matured. But the fact is we are planting seeds right now for our future. And part of that innovation and view forward has really driven some decisions that I've made as executive director from the very get-go, because I have been in industry. You know, I have worked for 2 terms representing the governor in the state of Florida at the Career Source Florida Board, and how this all works together. And so I've asked the question, what's the role of the National Estuary Program in all this? And so we have had technology innovation as something we've wanted to do for a while. I'm not going to belabor this, but you can go anywhere just about on the web and ask, you know, what is the marketplace for clean water, whether it's potable water, wastewater, water reuse, water remediation. The fact is we're looking at a massive industry globally. The U.S. is not a leader in this, although we are up in the top tier, but we have opportunities in the United States and in Florida to take a leadership role, because we need these solutions in order to move forward as sustainable 21st century communities. But the barriers are also high, and I've seen those barriers on both sides. So I represent government now in the 3 years, just like Virginia. I don't know how many individuals with well-meaning ideas and beginnings of corporations and concepts, sometimes prototypes, have come through our door, you know, and we're trying to figure out how do you manage that input and also help them negotiate some of those real barriers. And Dr. Wanielista mentioned it, but you know, when you first started, I'm sure, you know, when Bolden Gold first came across DEP's desk, they probably didn't say, come on, we're really excited. I mean, government and you all, we work in a different world. And so we have to be very careful about both transparency, and government is rightfully risk adverse with the public dollar. And yet industry, that time frame between what industry wants and what they need in order to make a dollar versus our permitting, our regulation, our vetting, our expectation, those two timelines don't meet. And so we have challenges of that public-private sector partner actually working to our benefit. And the very last one is one that I basically counsel private sector people all the time. People come through my desk, through my phone, through my email, and the first half of the pitch I'm going, this is really cool. And then all of a sudden they take whatever that innovation and technology and expand it out. And then they expand it out again. And then they expand it out again where all of a sudden I'm going, God, this is a cure for everything. And so my response to industry is, you know, you got to know what the problem set is. These markets are diverse. In fact, the water market, the problem of trying to commercialize innovation is partly because of that very first bullet. This market disaggregation is real. And so when I have a real innovative idea or concept or even something that's commercialized, figure out what market penetration point, and sometimes it's small delivery, sometimes it's big, rarely is it both, and I'll explain why that's rare. But we have opportunities to decrease these barriers, especially where we control some of that risk management, and we need to try to get as many barriers aside, and the biggest barrier is funding. So in that red, I say this. If you look at DARPA, and you look at the money that we put into human health, safety, welfare at a defense standpoint, you're looking at about $3 billion a year at the federal level. And it's generated some incredible technological advances that have gone on to commercialize. What if the United States actually had a DARPA-like agency for water technology in order to advance really the cutting edge of new technological advances? You know, where would we be in 5 years and 10 years with that level of investment? You are going to get some pressure, because I do, to move dollars into technology R&D. And the fact is, you heard today, we have technologies right now available to us today that can generate really impressive performance, both efficiency and effectiveness. And so we're moving those projects today. But 10 years, this industry is going to look different, and we're going to need to be funding that innovation, which is really coupling academia with industry to solve problems that then can commercialize and grow businesses. So there's a lot of examples. I'm not going to go into any of these other than I can look across the board in the water sector, in the subsectors, and tell you that innovation opportunities are everywhere. I wanted to highlight one that Virginia may have mentioned to you all, but when we did our biosolids conference a number of months ago, we got to look at this decentralized non-sewer sanitation, the Janicki Omni processor, and for many of us, it was like, wow, here's an innovation idea that's actually gone beyond pilot testing, you know, to maybe being totally transformative and disruptive in wastewater, both on a global scale. But how does it penetrate the marketplace? And Dr. Janicki mentioned that he's had pretty much given up on the United States because of these barriers, this risk aversion, because of the regulatory nature, and because we, for 25 and 30 years, have centralized to really large regional systems and not the other way. So, you know, some of those old ways of doing business, the traditional success, we need to think outside of the box if we're going to move forward. But all of these technologies can't get us to sustainable communities unless we have behavior change and investment, and that we start to rethink that whole framework. And You know, Keith Winston says this a lot, and I say it now every time I go out. It's not or, it's and. So it's not stormwater or muck dredging. It's stormwater and muck dredging and wastewater and fertilizer and education. If we don't get that all right in some context, then the whole thing starts to fall because we start arguing over the nuance. And I think, John, you said it best a couple of meetings ago. You know, if we're getting nitrogen, we're probably getting phosphorus with current technology. And if I'm Oreo umbra, the brown algae, I don't care where that pound of nitrogen came from, as long as it's there and I can eat it. You know, I don't care where it comes from. So the more we can get out, the most efficiently and the quickest, the better. So this brings me to where are we at the NEP. So there's lots, each one of those red lines are the obvious places where innovation can come in, or a vital signs wheel. And as we move our comprehensive conservation management plan, we are going to try to open dialogue in each of those areas for innovation and technology, knowing that in some cases technology is not going to fit, but somebody has got to open that portal of information, and we're going to try to help you as Brevard County and our other counties in the 38 cities to start to deliver at least some support service from the NEP on this technology and innovation front. We do have a technology portal which very few citizens and even some very few industries know, and so industries can actually go into the DEP portal. They can at least let DEP know about, you know, what technologies are out there. DEP keeps this portal active, and so you'll see inputs this morning from 2018. But the question I've had is, okay, so what do we do with this next? So I want to share what Reed has been doing for us over the summer internship program. And I gave this undergraduate student a lot to chew on in, you know, literally just 2 months of an internship. Said, tell me what the water sector looks like for our watershed and for the state of Florida. And go out there and, you know, mine data on where these corporations exist. So if you look at that table, and this is all preliminary data, we've got 244 corporations now in our database, and you can see, you know, a lot of them are in the wastewater sector. Consulting services is high. I would argue this is a small subset of probably what's there, but it's what Reed could put together to this date. But what it tells me is we have capacity. Now, some of these are big companies, some of them are small companies, but we have a water industry sector already in our watershed and in the state of Florida. By the way, this watershed's about half of that, so about half of those 200-plus companies are within our watershed boundary. And we're working on GIS mapping of those companies. The database is rich with contacts, with technology. And so Reed, just in the last 24 hours, knocked together a couple of heat maps for me to show you where he's headed. And so Reed's and my first thought is, and everybody's is, oh, well, look at that, they're clustered. And the first thing you want to do is say, oh, we have water innovation clusters in the state of Florida. And I want to tell you that we don't. So what we have is geographic distribution. And that is, you know, we have to parse this a little deeper to see what that means, if it means anything. But if you look at economic development in the United States over the last 10 years, everybody wants to talk about cluster development. And there's no question that when it's done right, cluster development can be a powerful tool for innovation and for connecting industry to academia, to the private, public, independent sectors that use those tools. But I want to steer you to this very recent article, which is really good about rethinking cluster initiatives. Just because you have a bunch of industries close doesn't mean they're talking to each other. Just because you have a number of industries in the same sector or subsector doesn't mean they actually function as a true cluster. And the challenges of developing Florida or our region as a true industry leader means that we actually need to be looking at those methodologies of creating clusters and the difficulties of forcing that when they don't exist. And we have examples of that in Florida with biotechnology a couple of decades ago. Investing in clusters, from the top down isn't the same as having these industries generate themselves organically, and generally and often it's the university that drives these developments. That it is the knowledge that universities deliver in coordination with the private sector that drives the technological advancement and ultimately the commercialization. And you saw that very clearly with Dr. Wanielista. And so when I'm out on the street, which is a lot, and I hear we don't need any more money for research, we don't need any more knowledge from our universities, we know it's shovel ready. Let's just fix the stormwater, the wastewater, the muck. My caution on that is, yes, let's do all of that, but we need to invest in R&D and academic research as well, because that's the next transformative change that will take nitrogen and phosphorus and say, let's get 100% of organic pollutants. Let's get our estrogenic compounds and antibiotics, which we don't have really good cost-effective technologies for at scale. I want to also say I hope you all come to the Friday's event at Florida Tech. Reed is going to give his presentation with his data, and so I wanted to pitch him, but we have decided at the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program that this is going to be one of 3 regional science symposia that we're going to invest in annually. My hope is that this event becomes not just regional, but a statewide technology conference. The other 2 are Harbor Branch for the Indian River Lagoon Science Symposia and the Shore event up in Daytona College. And those are not exclusive, but these are 3 that we think can grow into regional deliveries, if not gain some national significance. And I want to announce the first ever Hack the Indian River Lagoon event. This is going to be on November 2nd to the 4th. This is being led by the private incubator, Groundswell Startups in Melbourne. We are already gaining independent private sector support for sponsorships. And if you are as old as I am, you have to ask, so what is a hack event anyway? And so normally hackathons are, we always thought they were just coding, you go in and you see if you can hack into a database, make it better, big data analytics. This is going to be broader than that. This is going to be open up to innovation, whether it's at a concept level or a pilot commercialization scale. There'll be mentors there from the private sector. There'll be venture capital investors from the private sector. Groundswell Startups approached me along with Economic Development Council over a year ago about this concept. It's a way that we can start building innovation within the private sector to focus on challenges on the lagoon. So I hope you all go online, talk to Micah. If you'd like to be a corporate sponsor, we'd like to see the corporate sponsors grow. And then this big question, where do we go from here? And so I wanted to share the way I handle this, and I learned this at Aquafiber when I was in the industry side, that anytime you have a concept, you need to ask a number of questions, and you'd ask them today, by the way. Is this technology or process effective? Show me the data. Is it efficient? Show me the data. I'm not going to say that again, but show me the data should be on every single one of these questions. Is it environmentally safe? Have you done whole effluent toxicity tests? Have you looked at toxicity from the standpoint of marine systems versus freshwater systems? Is it permittable? This is one of the challenges about the system. You can have really good technologies were permitted in Washington and South Carolina, North Carolina, Narragansett, proof of performance in all those states. You come down to another state and you got to go through the whole permitting process, from scratch again. It's tough for industry to expand on a national level when you've got these variabilities in permit requirements state to state. The toughest one that most people have real challenges, and it was mentioned today, this contact time issue is meaningful, and very often it is the killer of most good ideas. This scalability question is critical to what you do and what I do, and that scalability relates directly to cost. And so scalability, it's one thing to see a hypothetical model, it's another thing to see a pilot project that actually is scaled up and delivered performance at scale. Cost competitiveness is something I've seen over and over again as a problem. If I'm in government and I look at a project, very often when I say this is the cost of my project, and you guys are doing it here, and I'm doing it in the Indian River Lagoon as well with the National Estuary Program, we're very often not looking at whole program costs. So if I have staff, and those staff are sunk costs in government, I'm typically not taking the legal time, Virginia's staff time, and bringing that all in to look at cost per unit volume. If I'm in industry, I have to do that because that's the margin between losing money and making money. And so if we're going to compare apples to apples through this whole suite of independent, private sector, public sector deliveries, then this has got to be whole program costs. Everything needs to be in there as if we were industry in order to compare apples to apples if we're going to commoditize some of these deliverables. Is it sustainable? Do we have a waste stream? What do we do it? And lastly, what saves us in the public sector is if the private sector is willing to go to risk on pay-per performance, they feel that strongly, then we can mitigate our rightful risk aversion by just paying for performance and not taking risk on unproven technologies. We continue to really push our innovator and investor network. We know if industry is not at the table with us, we will not be successful. We will continue to do that. And so that's all I have other than to say I think you are moving forward in a very, very careful, deliberate, but also aggressive manner. I'm proud to be working for Brevard County and for you all at the Save the Indian River Lagoon program. Virginia and I talk weekly, and so I continue to be here to serve you, and hopefully we'll be able to help you with some of these technology questions as we build this database and ultimately a portal for industry to weigh in through that portal. And I want to show you one example, and there's a number, but this is the high bar for me. If you want to see one example where this has been done really, really well, look at the Water Council and see what they've done over the course of a short amount of time in bringing industry to the table and actually creating one of the most impressive true clusters that I have seen in a long time. And that's all I have other than questions.
I'm so glad to hear you say that about the Water Council. I was involved with them in their genesis.
Oh, now
Yeah.
you just became my new best friend. I want to get up there and talk to them because what they've done is impressive.
Example. Yeah. And that was a partnership. You know, that was really the community coming together.
We're going to be talking about clean water for decades ahead. The federal government, its various piece parts, have an extraordinarily large role there, agriculture, interior, and so on. You mentioned DARPA. I think DARPA will probably end up with a direct role also because they serve the military services. The military services have deep interest in environmental issues like this, as they have shown in the area of energy conservation, energy use. We're going to have fighter planes flying on biofuel if we don't already. And so I think that it's not just a civilian counterpart to DARPA and the civilian sector, commercial sector, dealing with civilian enterprises, but it also involves dealing with the military and with DARPA as well.
John, you're absolutely right. In fact, there's really close connections. When we first started talking water, Larry Harvey and I, and we got that close to a mid-shuttle bay locker before we had the accident, and all commercialization disappeared. There are really close connections with what's going to happen in commercial space. If we're going to the moon, if we're going to Mars, and it's going to be human flight, then we're going to deal with wastewater, reuse water. Everything needs to be miniaturized at 100% reuse efficiencies. And so these, I think you're right, that if we can bring water, not create a new layer of government, but bring it into those existing structure with funding, there's a proven record in DARPA of moving good ideas to innovation to commercialization. So I agree wholeheartedly.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much. Since we are 3 minutes from our time deadline, I'm going to entertain a motion for extension of our meeting
So moved.
A second?
for 15 minutes?
Probably a half hour, yeah.
Okay, for a half hour. All
I'll
right.
second that motion.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. John has agreed to postpone the discussion for meeting frequency until next month, so we will put that off. Virginia, if you could talk to us about the proposed
Thank you.
cost.
So the next item is cost share eligibility for the plan for next year. And the reason that you need to discuss this now is because we have our annual meeting with the cities next week to talk to them about how to apply for funds in next year's cycle. And we need to provide the eligibility cost to them. So you saw this last month. There was some concern about whether there was another way to calculate costs and eligibility other than average. We had a conference call with Courtney Barker and Todd Swindle and talked about different options. And what we came up with a few ideas. One is following up on the committee's idea that during that meeting with the cities, we will ask them, you know, what are their barriers to participation? What are their barriers to getting these projects done? Which of those barriers can we try to knock down for them? The other was a suggestion that maybe at mid-year, we look at the revenues that have actually come in versus what we projected and budgeted, and whether we can cycle those dollars into projects that are either, as they're moving through design, seeing opportunities to provide more benefits if they had more money, being able to provide those funds at that, you know, in a mid-year cycle process rather than waiting for the next annual update. And then taking a hard look at if they have cost overruns. We already have that contingency, so being able to bring those opportunities back to you. And so we would run with this table with those considerations worked into the text of the plan. The only other issue is what to do about the sewer lateral rehab pilot. And I know last month the feedback that we got was that, you know, the satellite beach pilot hasn't moved forward yet. We really don't know what the benefits are, so we're not comfortable offering programs like that countywide. Just after that meeting, we got the results for the smoke testing, and so Antony wrote up a little one-page summary, and so I wanted to ask that question again. Is that enough information for you to feel comfortable offering smoke testing services, funding for smoke testing services to municipal communities so that we can find where those I&I problems are that lead to overflows and lead to groundwater pollution, or whether we still don't know enough and you want to wait until that pilot project is further along?
Okay, so, and I previously responded to Virginia, and I'll be very clear. Anthony, thank you for writing up the memo. What stimulated this study was our hypothesis that breaks and leaks within lateral lines were contributing excess nutrients in the groundwater, and we chose to conduct the study in Satellite Beach based in part of our understanding that harsh environment beachside was most likely to corrode the older pipes. So I read the study, It's almost 100 pages, a lot of it's photographs. It was detailed, it was extensive. We have demonstrated that lateral lines do not present a significant nutrient contribution. As a result of that, I don't think it's cost justified to continue doing these smoke studies. We did identify sources of infiltration, and I think those will be useful to managers of the sewer and wastewater systems. Look, there were over 5,100 properties that were studied. 9 had broken lateral lines. I mean, if I round that up, it's 0.000%. Now, the study did find 100 homes where the clean-out cap was missing or broken. And typically, these cost about $10 to replace, though you may have to do some additional work, so they calculated it could be up to $2,000, which I suppose is possible. But when I fixed them, I had to make a trip to a store and buy some PVC and some glue and some stuff, and it cost about $100 plus the shovel. The study, more importantly, and this is not in the memo, found over 300 manhole covers, and that's where they might or they are allowing infiltrate. The total estimate was just about 1 million gallons. And also in the study, they note the significance of river height to groundwater and that how that may be impacting things. As the post-Irma infiltrate was in excess of 6 million gallons, the study offers 2 relatively simple, relatively inexpensive solutions that should be implemented by counties and municipality utility managers. I don't think it's our job. The expertise was obvious in the testing, the smoke testing methodology. The report was detailed. The cost repairs seem a little bit extraordinary to me. The estimated cost per pound of nitrogen removal in the memo we received is a wild guess at best. There was absolutely nothing in the study that estimated the amount of nutrients that were created by these 9 leaks or the other sources. The basis for the nutrient input was an estimate of total influx from sewage system leaks averaged over years, then assuming those nutrients came from these specific leaks, which is basically assumption upon assumption upon assumption upon estimation. It is not solid enough, in my view, to spend tax money. So let me just be real clear. We demonstrated that lateral lines do not present a significant source of nutrient contribution that we're concerned with. As a result, further studies are not necessary. We invested $186,000. I think it was well spent. We had a legitimate concern. We now know the answer. And so do the utility managers. It's in there. They don't need to go study. They need to go replace manhole covers. The identification of the sources will be useful to those that manage. I do not see any additional need for spending this tax money on these projects. That's my feedback there, Miss Virginia.
What are the pipes in Satellite Beach? What is the material? Are they the Orangeburg pipes? Are they the laterals? Typically, the housing, what age was it built, and what are the pipes made of?
So a lot of the ones that were repaired were PVC, like just broken PVC pipes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in a community like...
Smoke testing isn't the best way to find broken laterals. So it finds some that are shallow and dry soils, but a broken lateral that's in saturated soils, unless it was a big enough gap, that smoke wouldn't be coming up. Mm-hmm. So there's other hydrostatic and air pressure tests that would be the best way, but those are a lot more expensive to do, and you can just test the entire neighborhood at once.
Mm-hmm. So,
okay, yeah, my question is because there are a couple of communities in Cocoa where, they have Orangeburg pipes, which of course are, they're beyond their lifetime now, because I think they stopped using them in the 70s.
Right. So another way would be CCTV. You get a camera down in there. Those are options. And to clarify as well, the soil plan, the funds did not fund the smoke testing.
Exactly.
That was funded by
The utility.
the utilities.
I thought we approved up to $800,000 for that,
That was for the grant.
For
program.
repairing the laterals
just for repairing laterals.
and caps, replacing caps.
So we didn't pay for the study?
No.
Well, I apologize, I thought we did, but it's still good money spent, but it's not a problem.
Courtney, I know you.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I just wanted to comment on that, is we did our stormwater, like basically survey of all of our stormwater infrastructure and found that most of our pipes are sitting in water. So that has, in my opinion, something to do with that. I think another issue is that a lot of the residents in Satellite Beach have already replaced their pipes over the years. And you'll find that in probably a little bit more, you'll find more problems in areas that don't have that are not as affluent. So I think you'll see some differences as we finish the smoke testing along the whole beach side, because I think some of the other smoke tested areas, those preliminary reports are coming out, and there's some more problems in those areas. So I think that it was very good information. The manhole issue too, I think you have to be careful in reviewing, seeing that for that it's not really a problem in the utility. They just finished a round of pipe lining, and they have to lift the manhole covers when they do that. And so the manholes aren't going to be fully sealed for a couple months. So when you see all those manhole problems, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they just accessed all those manholes during this time. We were very surprised with the clean-out cap, and I think that was probably the most useful part of this. And we have already started with the education piece with our residents on what those are. We had some residents already call us when they got their newsletter, hey, I can't find mine, stuff like that. So it's been working, I think, in that respect. So I'd like to see the utility continue finishing the smoke testing, especially along the beach side, to give us an idea of the magnitude. But I also think it's great, it would be great to do it in an area that isn't so submerged in terms of the water table, or the water table being so high. And then also in areas that aren't as affluent. And I think to do this in an area that has a lower income, where you don't see those pipe replacements happening very often, that will be more telling, I think. And that's something I think we should continue to do. And not really up for the utility. The utility knows where their problems are. It's really that private side, and I think it's very educational for the public to see those smoke coming out of their yard. They go, oh my gosh, that is a problem, and it was kind of a spectacle, I think, throughout the city when they were doing it. So a lot of people learned a lot through the process too. So I think the fact that the utility is doing that in the beach side is very laudable. I really appreciate it. The city really appreciates their work, and I think it really gave us a lot of good information to move forward on the private side.
I just had one. I wanted to say what Courtney said. I think I would like to see it continue. In my mind, I keep going back to the presentation Mark Regan did after Irma, how he said how people on the beach flush their toilets twice as much as people in the mainland or something like that. And maybe that is them flushing the toilets, maybe it's not, maybe it is the laterals leaking. And the fact that the water table is high, or the time of year, if the water soil is wet, I think there are lots of other issues or factors that are involved. But I would like to see the utility, continue this, and so we can get a larger, survey site or different sectors just to see. But I think there was good information that came from it as well.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, I wanted to reinforce what Antony said. I think sometimes looking at scientific studies, you get this impression like a single scientific study, it's the definitive proof. And in this case, John, you more or less stated that lateral lines are not a problem. There's nothing in that report that gives me confidence that lateral lines are not a problem. It's just that that test didn't pick it up. I just had my annual my semi-annual physical this week. I went to the doctor, had the blood test. You know, he said, or she said, "You're great, you're in great shape, your blood test is fine." That doesn't mean I'm not going to fall over from a heart attack walking away from this meeting today. It just means that that superficial test that costs something like, I don't know, like $20, whatever it is that they charge through Medicare, it just means it didn't catch the problem. And I think there are a number of cases, there's literature out there, I'm sure, that has the deficiencies or the faults associated with smoke testing for lateral line leaks. When you see the smoke, it's an obvious indication that something's wrong. Okay, when you don't see the smoke, it doesn't mean that there's no problem. We don't need to worry about it anymore. So I would very much prefer that we continue on for at least a little while with more smoke testing and to identify more of these problems. And I was blown away with the number of the caps.
Me too.
And the potential. I really appreciated the effort of the contractors to try to do an estimate, as difficult as it is, of increased flows through the sewage system as a result of that leakage, and it's pretty significant. And what was the number one complaint after the hurricanes was the leaking sewage, and so this is a direct indication that we have a problem. And I love the fact that those people that were doing the testing decided, let's go ahead and fix it while we're right here, rather than let's go back to some board someplace and see if we can get the money to go ahead and fix it. And I would say gung-ho, let's keep going.
Okay, well, John, I'm glad you got a
Wait a
good
minute.
bill of health.
Wait just a minute.
Oh, I was
Let's
just,
let other people talk,
well,
and then I'll
I
come
was
back to
just
you.
going to say that I know that Cocoa, a less affluent community, has budgeted for smoke testing, and it's either scheduled or coming up, but I would hope we would reach out and look at some of those results, because that, you know, will give us a different picture as well.
Yes.
So I just remember college statistics, and a sample size of 5,100 plus can pretty accurately be extrapolated. But if we're not paying for the smoke testing, God bless them, let them pay for it, because we learned good stuff from it. I do find the estimates for repairs extraordinarily high. $10,000 to replace a lateral line is roughly twice what all of my neighbors paid when we privately replaced our old lines, okay? But in some cases, I can see where $10,000 is not an unreasonable number. $2,000 for caps, again, it's possible. However, here's the problem. We don't know what the nutrient, specifically nitrogen contribution from this is. It was not part of the study. And so at the end of the memo that we were provided, which calculated the cost per pound of nitrogen based upon their estimated nine lateral lines and 90-some caps, et cetera, came out to a couple $100,000. But we don't have any idea how much nitrogen's actually involved in this, so I can't accept the amount of money that we should budget from this. And you can go back and read it, but there is no math to support it. There's no
Terry?
study and no math.
Terry?
I would just point, I mean, you know, we're looking at both ends of this. If you think back to the sewer slip lining project guy that came and talked and was so informative, you know, one of the things I remember from that, maybe it was a sidebar, EPA study showed that slip lining of the mains was somewhere between a 30...
Come up to the microphone a little bit.
30, I'm not loud enough? 30% and 30% and 0% reduction in the infiltration by slip lining the mains. 0% would be a strong indication that there's a lot going on in the laterals, right? I mean, if you're not getting it in through the mains. So, you know, so we're concerned about where is that infiltration happening? Is it happening in the mains where slip lining will give us some improvement? Or is there a massive problem with the laterals where we need to do some work? And the answer, I mean, the thing is, we don't have the data, right? One of the questions is, do we have something in place, and it wouldn't be ours necessarily, but the the sewer facility to try to do data collection after we do this slip lining to see what, what's the before and after. The next high water event, do we have less? We were overflowing South Beach by, I don't know how many, 6.5 million daily load went to 10 or 12 million, right? So it was a lot of infiltration. Is that going to be reduced with the slip lining, or do we still have infiltration problems? And then the other side of it is, okay, my understanding is normal gravity-fed sewer lines, we don't have a big exfiltration problem, right? I mean, there's not hydraulic pressure in there that's driving the stuff out. Of course, I think what we worry about there, to me, is in the sewer lines and the laterals, less about the nitrogen loading and more about fecal matter and those kinds of things. So my point is we're on both sides of this. I think my fundamental point is we just don't have the data to jump to, final conclusions.
Danielle?
I just want to note, from my experience, all of the lateral lines that I've had estimates to be replaced, or the realtors that I've spoken to that have had to deal with that, have been from $10,000 to $14,000 base average.
All right. Yes, John?
First of all, very useful comments from John. I share the view that we're probably not ready to wedge a big chunk of money against this in the next year's Lagoon plan. But I also think we need to keep looking at this and understand it better. One of the things that's happening, you got a lot of knockouts that are missing. You got a high water table from a storm. You got a lot of stuff goes in. It goes through the wastewater system. It ends up in the river because the wastewater system can't handle the load. There are secondary and tertiary effects that I'm not sure we have yet. We also ought to be reaching back to those communities, those sewer districts that have already done smoke testing and done slip lining and so on. There's data there as well. Cocoa Beach did this probably 4 or 5 years ago. It's not part of this data information. The last thing to say is this is something that may not ever get a big chunk of Lagoon Trust Fund money, but I do think it's an area that's ripe for regulatory concern. The time you can look at septic systems, the time you can look at laterals, the time you can look at is there a knockout missing or not, is when the property is sold. You sell property right now and it's next to the water, you have to get an elevation survey. That's about $600. That goes into the price of the sale. This is something that could also go there. It's something that could probably be mandated on a regulatory basis by sewer districts, by municipalities, and by bodies like the county of Brevard County. So this is, I think, a ripe area to keep looking at. My gut feel is that there's probably more nitrogen and more problem coming from screwed up sewer systems on private property than we really recognize.
So, Virginia, what are you asking us for today?
I guess it's, whether to leave this row on the table or whether to remove it. My thought, if I may, and I want to first take credit for Antony's math. I was the one responsible for having him do the math that way. When this group decided to move forward with this pilot project last year, the math was based on the impact of the overflow on the lagoon, right? We have no idea what the leaky laterals might or might not be doing, so it was strictly based on the impact of the overflow. And so that's what we did in this memo calculation as well. We went back to that overflow calculation, and with the consultant's estimate that these repairs would lower the inflow to the sewer system by almost 1.2 million gallons per day, how would that minimize the risk of overflow in the future if these repairs were all made? So we have an investment in, if we were, and you all can shape how we do this, but if we were to promote smoke testing by saying we'll pay for the smoke testing, we'll pay for the lateral repairs, we would be highlighting all the other problems in the public system that the utilities would then be aware of and need to come up with funding to repair as soon as possible. And the idea was to, reduce the risk of sewage overflows to the lagoon as quickly as possible.
Can I comment?
I'm still asking what you want us to determine whether we are going
To continue.
Whether we want to ask the cities, tell the cities that if they proposed smoke testing and lateral repair projects, that we would be willing to pay $850 or whatever the memo calculation was, $454 a pound for, I don't know.
for
I guess-
lateral projects and smoke testing.
Yes.
Got it, okay. Yes, Courtney?
So I think I would like personally to do this because I think the huge concern among the public with the sewer discharges, and a lot of people are asking, what can the tax do? And this fits in what we could do. It may not be a huge nitrogen reduction overall in the grand scheme of our projects. I mean, I can agree with that. But it provides that the one thing that we can do for sewer discharge, and this is something that we can do. And it may not be huge, but it's something we can do. And I think it shows something to the public that this is something that the lagoon tax can help with. And
Would you like to
that I
put
think
that
is very important.
in the form of a motion?
Sure. I'll move to approve extending the program out to the cities and to the utilities for smoke testing and the lateral repair grant program.
And I'll second that motion.
All right.
Question.
Hold on. It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
Yes.
I have a question.
Is there a cost cap on this? Is there a cost cap that we're going to say, yes, this money is here, but we will only have this much in the bucket for next year? I think there should be.
Well, I think the key word is proposed. This is to let the cities propose projects to us. We don't have to approve them. We could always go back and say, well, hold on, we'll take this one, or we won't take that one, or have a discussion with them. I think that's what this is, right? We're doing to allow them to propose.
Correct. So when we bring everybody's proposals back to you, you could pick a cap at that time?
Yeah.
However, the lagoon, the lagoon project plan right now has got parameters around every spending area.
I agree.
This needs one. So could you make that part of what you come back to us with?
Okay.
Yeah. What's a reasonable number so that we don't have infinite liability there? And with that, I'd support it.
All right. Yes.
Question?
Wait, John. next.
I completely support, just like getting rid of septic tanks, that we pay for laterals. I think that fits within what we do. Are we going to pay for smoke testing? Because first I thought we did, then I'm told somebody else paid for it. Now it's proposed that we pay for smoke testing. So this is where I'm confused. Did we pay the $186,000?
The county
Or did the utilities?
The county utilities paid that $186,000.
Are we going to reimburse it?
No, that was not
So we have
On the
not
table.
paid for smoke testing.
correct.
Is it proposed, Courtney, that we pay for smoke testing? Is that what this says?
But that's the proposal. So we would allow utilities to come to us and say, I have a smoke testing project, and they're going to be asking us for the funds.
I'll pay for broken ones, because I think that they are contributing, even though we can't define how much. But I don't think it's our job to spend tax money to test municipal systems that they should be testing themselves. That's just my opinion, and
Terry, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted that clarification. So the motion as it's offered is to include both pay for testing and pay for remediation.
That's correct, right? Yeah.
And again, the projects have to come to us for approval. It's just allowing the option for those entities to propose projects in that area.
It would
Yes.
give the green light to Natural Resources to extend the invite out to the utilities to come up to us with projects.
Danielle?
I understand that there's more effective testing that can be done for the lateral lines, and I would hesitate to do any more testing where we know that the lateral lines would be underwater and spend money on smoke testing when there's more effective testing manners that can be done for those lateral lines. So I would hesitate depending on where it is.
We could have fixed all those lateral lines for less than 100 grand. We spent $186,000 to find 9 private properties in an area we were told would have problems because of the high corrosion being beachside. Maybe there's other areas that are worse, but we found 9. And I would think there's other ways that this can be approached along John's line of regulatory or code enforcement versus us spending 200 grand to find 9 broken lines.
I think the problem with regulatory is you've got to show there's a problem in order for the regulation to come out.
I'm not sure there is one.
And I agree with you, but I think Courtney was saying with the pipes being underwater, that the smoke testing maybe isn't the best way to done. Not only that, it was done, what, the beginning of this year or over the summer, which is the rainy season? Yeah, no?
No, they stopped at the beginning of
At the rainy season, okay. To Danielle's point, the line item says sewer lateral rehab pilot. To me, it doesn't say smoke test. To me, it doesn't say fix the laterals. To me, it's going out to the cities and say, look, there's an issue with the sewer system that the utilities are not going to pay for. To Courtney's point, there were a lot of people, a room full of people that came out here that said, what can you do about the overflow? I think that this is a good idea to let the cities come to us with some ideas, propose them, and see what they say. And if it's not smoke testing, what other testing is there? And let the cities come up with a plan that they think is good use for the money, so that we can see if there is a problem. And maybe there is a problem, and at that point, we can go to the people who write the regulations and say, this is above us, please do something.
All right. Okay. We have a motion and a second to allow the municipalities or any entity to propose projects for sewer lateral rehab pilots.
That's not complete.
And an agreement by county staff that they will put a dollar limit on the overall line item.
That they will propose a dollar limit to us. All right.
So your use of the term rehab includes testing for faults as well as remediating the faults?
Absolutely. Yes. Both of those.
Is that clear in the language?
That's part of what Courtney proposed, yes. So testing and rehab for any lateral
I'm sorry, I
line.
didn't hear the word testing before, I just heard rehab, so.
No, testing
and rehab.
was
Okay,
part
thank
of
you.
her motion.
Rest.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All right.
Madam
Well,
Chairman?
we are now at 12
Madam
o'clock.
Chairman, I have a motion. I move we extend the meeting long enough to complete a discussion of approved agenda item 7 alpha. I think this business, how much we're going to give away for pound of nitrogen and so on, deserves at least a brief comment.
John, end public comment.
And public comment.
And
yeah.
public comment comes after, yes, and public comment to clean up the cards we have.
7 alpha or 7C?
Charlie?
Yeah, that's the way it's laid out here. The motion says I'd like to have whatever discussion is required to deal with how much we're going to put in the Lagoon plan on eligible cost share per pound of total nitrogen removed by project type. There's a couple of questions I have on that, and if we're going to be talking to the cities next week, let's have a conversation here this week. And it also would extend the meeting long enough to accommodate the public comments for which you have cards. I seek a second.
Yes, is there a second to, I'm still confused. You want
We are operating under approved agenda. We have not completed it.
No,
I
what are you asking for
I move-
discussion on?
I'm asking to extend the meeting's time long enough to complete the committee's discussion on item 7 alpha, and also to complete the public comment card, public comments that we have.
7 alpha is meeting frequency and proposed bylaws change, which
No,
we
no,
moved.
well, it's 7 Bravo, whatever it is.
That's why I'm asking.
Seven.
That's why I'm asking you, John. What is it?
7 Bravo.
Got it, okay. All right. Do I have a second?
I will second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Madam Chairman, could I move to item 7 Bravo, which is eligible cost share. On the upper table there, we've got septic sewer removal by sewer extension has bumped up more than half again the price, and dredging has bumped up more than 4 times the price, and I'm just wondering why. And then I have a second question as well.
The sewer has gone up because we have cost estimates from a number of county projects and a number of city projects. Antony also reached out to Indian River County and got some costs from their projects, recent projects as well. And the Lagoon plan was based on an average of $20,000 per home for connection, and projects are costing closer to $27,000, $28,000 per home.
So it's pure fact of life?
Yes.
Okay, what about dredging?
That is also based on more recent cost estimates from the projects that we've done so far, and the new work that the Florida Tech research team has done on where the muck is, and it is now in deeper, smaller areas with less flux area than the original plan based on Water Management District data that had the muck more spread out in shallow fill. So it's a different flux reduction benefit for the same volume of muck removal.
And how competitive is the marketplace that we're buying into? Is there cost competition for these jobs, or are we dealing with monopoly dredgers?
We've had 3 or 4 bids on most. I was looking for Wayne on the majority of
Qualified
projects.
bids? Thank you. And the last thing on this table I want to talk to is down at the bottom where we're allocating cost per share by area. That turned into political football a year ago, and there were changes made to allocate it by basically by longitude. We're looking at a very, very significant kick up in cost per pound removed. Is there a political sensitivity there that we expect, and is this something we really need to case harden in our argument that we're going to take to the Board of County Commissioners next winter?
You're right, we did go through this. I think that the committee's analysis of, what was driving those cost differences is accounted for here. And these are the real costs of doing business on mainland versus, urban barrier island, where projects only capture, this much load at a time. You have to do a lot of them to add up to the same benefit as a large, regional project opportunity on the mainland.
Could I ask, could we ask that you as staff have conversations with commissioner staffs to see if this is an area of significant sensitivity, or whether this is something where common sense and logic will prevail?
I can do that. I can't do that before the city workshop.
No, fine. But by the time we kick this off the county commissioner, I think we ought to have an understanding of whether they're going to kick us back.
To follow up on John's question, the cost of a muck project itself has not significantly changed.
Correct.
But because of the surface volume, our calculation has changed?
Yes.
Okay.
It was originally based on $35 a cubic yard, and our analysis was $35 and change per cubic yard. It was amazing how accurate that was. It is
but-
purely the distribution of the muck that has changed.
Okay.
Virginia, I just had two questions, I'm getting my numbers all wrong. Year zero, because we had a year zero, the year zero numbers, are they the same as the 2018 eligible? I guess my point
No,
is...
they are not.
Okay, I would like to see maybe the next time we look at this, a total viewpoint, so we can kind of see where our numbers are going. And to that end, have we then recalculated what our cost per pound per year of those projects are going to be using our original plan to see if we're busting the bank? And I think if we had some sort of historic graph or trend line, we might be able to see when we're getting to a point where we're going to be in trouble, that the projects that were in the plan that everybody voted on are not going to be able to be completed. Thank you.
All right. I'm open to entertaining a motion on this.
Move to approve the eligible cost share per pound by project type
As presented.
as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Point of order, is there a vote necessary at this time? We're not going to deal with these numbers in a committee mode for at least 2-3 months. This is just benchmark numbers to present to the cities next week. I don't know that that's a proper vote for us.
That's what Virginia is asking us for. That's why we extended the meeting.
We will incorporate these numbers into the grant application forms that auto-calculate for the purpose of the city's proposing projects. So it would be very challenging, and I'm not sure how we'd explain to the cities
That we changed it.
if we modified these numbers between the time they apply and the time we accept.
I will vote for this.
All right. There's a motion on the floor to accept the eligible cost per pound per year of total nitrogen as presented by Virginia. And there is a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now to public comment. And I have 2 speaker cards for general public comment. Lou Konicki?
He left. It's his birthday today.
Oh, well, happy birthday, Lou. We're sorry that we missed you. And Lisa has also left? Yes. All right. Jim, I know you were on to speak for something else. Jim Glass? We didn't actually, we didn't get to it, but we didn't get to it.
You're good now. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
But if you'd like to speak to it?
I'm passing out a proposed addition to your annual update that will present better information to the public, and especially our guys that I go fishing with, on the cost of the plan and what the money's being spent on. Put it in pretty simple terms, and I'd appreciate it if you would consider adding this to the plan when you update it, because it gives a very good perspective on how our money's being spent. And the last item on there I had was, to us, to tell whether the plan is being successful, seagrass is the lifeblood of the lagoon. So if you could calculate the number of acres that seagrass has been added to the lagoon every year, that'll tell us, the general public, the lay people, how successful it is. We don't understand milligrams per liter, pounds of nitrogen, pounds of this, but we do understand seagrass. And the last thing is that we still advocate a modification to the plan when you consider it to put more money towards eliminating human waste out of the lagoon. That's the problem in our perspective. So when you update it, we would ask you to please consider putting more money towards getting the waste, fixing the sewer lines, fixing the sewage treatment plants, getting rid of septic tanks, and so forth and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Meeting adjourned.
Hey, were you going to have any comment, any final comment? Really would hope that the chair would start using the timer for all speakers through the whole meeting, because we should do a better job at that. We don't need to go on as long as we did today.
Okay. All right. I didn't know that was an option. Sorry.
If not, I'll bring the one I used to use in class from home with a little red light that comes on and says, "Stop talking."
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I wanted to thank Department DEP. They were here. We asked them some questions 2 months ago. They followed up with the information about septic sewage tank spills in all 67 counties over the last 5 years. And if you'll sort through it, you'll find that Brevard County, which has the 9th largest capacity in the state of Florida, actually didn't have the top number of spills. However, by volume in 2017, we were number 2 in the state. But the information is now available to all of us, and I think it's actually really good information to sort through. They're not doing that bad of a job.
Thank you.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.